Thank you, Chair. I can advise we've got 12 members present this morning, 4 in the hall, being yourself and the Vice Chair and Councillor Dashbert and Councillor Thompson. 8 members present on Teams, being Councillors Beretti, Brodie, Drybrow, Justy, Hagman, Johnston, McCammon and Marsh. Since the papers have been issued, I've got a vacancy now from the Democratic Alliance Group following Councillor Scobie's last day as a councillor yesterday, and there's also a vacancy from the Dumfries and Galloway Independent Group, and Councillor Marshall is currently not present. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I approve members' remote participation. So moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, Archie.
Yeah, apologies for Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. So moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest or statement of connection they wish to make? No. Good. Okay, so moving on to item 3, minute of previous meeting, 12th of June 2025. Can we approve the minute of the meeting? And I'll take silence as agreement. Yep, all happy. Okay, on to item 4, outside bodies, Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. Report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources, and Fraser Davis is here to assist. Fraser, anything to add?
No, thanks, Chair. Just also to highlight, Councillor Scobie's now retired, so there's a vacancy on the Joint Safety Committee.
Okay. Councillor Drybrow?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. It's on that particular point. I think Councillor Scobie has been on the Joint Health and Safety Committee for a long time. I think the other 2 that have been the longest serving is myself and Stephen Thompson. Just a thank you to Willie for his, challenges and suggestions throughout that particular period of time.
Yeah, absolutely, Archie. And I will note that for the minute. Our thanks as a committee for his time on that Joint Safety Committee. So with that, we have a vacancy. Do we have any willing volunteers? If not, I'm quite happy to do so. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm quite happy to do it as chair. Yeah, okay. So in the recommendations, we've been asked to appoint to the Joint Safety Committee, and we've agreed to appoint myself as chair, if that's okay. Good. So item 5, Annual Governance Statement 2025-26, Development Timeline, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources, and again, Fraser Davis is here to assist members if you have any questions. Nothing to add to the report, I take it now. Members? Councillor Drybrow.
This report comes every year for the arrangements of the Annual Governance Statement. Chair, I don't have any issues with it. I'm happy to agree the recommendations.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and also happy. I think the bit I'm noticing is the engagement with political groups, and just to welcome. I think has there been a slight change in timing to that, because I think in the past, often it would be around about the February, March time, I think, if I remember correctly, and it was just to recognise that it's now out of the way of a very sort of difficult time for councillors when they're setting budgets, etc. So thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor. No, you're right enough. We have changed the time of that ever so slightly. I think it's mostly related to the date of the previous committee. Normally we bring an initial draft to members and then engage with members following that prior to the final one. So we've just adjusted the timing to reflect the timing of that initial committee.
Happy with that, Councillor Thompson? Yep. So no other members wishing to come in, so we'll move to the recommendations. And we've been asked to consider and agree the arrangements for the development of the Annual Governance Statement 2025-26, which I think we've done. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, Scrutiny Reviews 2025-26, Service Level Agreement Processes, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources, and again, Fraser Davis is here to assist members with questions. Nothing to add to the report, no. So I'll open to members. I've got Councillor Drybrow.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and I totally agree with the recommendations. I'd just like to know what opportunities that we will have to scrutinise these when they come forward. I know they're doing the annual agenda for scrutiny reports, but I'm presuming that the service level agreements, for instance, will be open to scrutiny from the audit risk and scrutiny committee during those particular times. We've had some good reports back from internal audit, and I think it's appropriate that this has the same.
Yep. No, thanks for your question, Councillor Driver. So our initial plan at the moment, as it stands, is to engage with services across the council to, in essence, find out what else is out there with regards to service level agreements. Planning to work with legal services to do a review, probably quite similar to the recent review of leisure agreements at education. So this is in essence to pick up anything else that's out there and report on any kind of findings in those back to members, partly through the committee meetings itself and also through the various workshops we're expecting to hold early to mid next year. Kind of just depends on how many service level agreements we discover and kind of pressures on officer time to undertake those reviews. So yes, members will get an opportunity to in essence review what we find.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Barretti, morning, Tony.
Yeah, morning, Chair. I'm on my phone, so it might be a little bit awkward. On page 23, 3.3, with the viability of the repair workshop, which was supposed to have a report back, is that report likely to be delayed long, or are we talking just a few months, because it is quite a valid piece of work that's to be done?
No, thanks, Councillor. I would hope to bring it to the committee as soon as we possibly can. It's just been obviously over the summer. It's been there's been a lot of other kind of business going on specifically relating to that service. So my intention is to bring it back to members for scrutiny as soon as I possibly can. So.
Thank you for that, Fraser. Any other questions from members? No, all quite happy. So we'll move to the recommendations, and we're being asked to consider and agree, which we've done, the scrutiny review scope detailed in the appendix. So thank you, members. Moving on to item 7, tackling poverty and inequalities, report by Head of Thriving Communities, and we have Mark Malloy and Mark Thompson online, I think, to assist members with any questions. Mark, do you have anything to add to the report?
Morning, Chair, morning, members. Just to say that we've captured here a lot of the discussion as well that took place at the members' seminar for the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities in Housing subcommittee a few weeks ago. So members who are also part of that committee will hopefully recognise some of the discussion that we took there. So we've ensured that that's been captured within this as well. So nothing else to add, and happy to take members' questions.
Thanks very much, Mark. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Mark, for the report. I'm looking at the score, the current risk assessment and target risk assessment. There's been no move in the assessment of that particular thing, where if we're going to do things, we need to mitigate against that risk and potentially, look at a lower score for the target risk, but you've not put anything down for the lower score.
Mark.
Through yourself, Chair, that we really considered that, Councillor Dryburgh, because normally when you see these reports, normally there's a current risk and the target risk is lower, and this was probably quite an anomaly around it being the same, and that was after significant consideration and discussion at the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership and also at the Council's Risk Management Group, because that there's so many factors affecting this that are out with the control of the Council in terms of global and national factors, and also decisions by UK and Scottish Government, it was felt that when you looked in that and the round, that we couldn't confidently provide to members that we would reduce that target risk because there is so much out with our control. So although we're mitigating against that, a lot of factors, that I would suggest to members that it's actually a positive that we're even able to maintain that at the current risk level based on so many factors that's out with the control of the organisation.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. And Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'm conscious that there's a kind of inside and outside look at how we tackle poverty and inequalities as a council. One is obviously the elements within the council where we've agreed budgets at full council, and the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities in Housing subcommittee that's able to look at those across the piece, as it were. But then there's the sort of outside, which is the partnership side with the other agencies. I'm just wondering how we properly sort of recognise that level of risk, because there's what we do and what we can account for, and then there's how we work in partnership with others. And I think there's maybe both have poverty in common in terms of what they're trying to address, but there's one that we have direct influence and control over, another which is like, how do we work with these agencies and align with that to get better outcomes? So I'm just wondering if we can maybe touch on that side, because I think there is a distinction between the two.
And an accountability that's different as well. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Thompson. I think you're right. There's probably three aspects to this. There's the part that the council's in control of and working to mitigate against the within the wider partnership approach, which is led by the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, and then the factors that are out with our control. But the reason that this is more focused, it was important, I think, to acknowledge the global and national factors, but because this is a council risk, that's why there's not significant mention of our partnership work and the mitigations that are taking place by a range of partners, because this was specifically around the risk to the council that's there. So we've tried to mention, and because it's all interconnected. But you'll also maybe aware through the Community Planning Partnership that when we take the 6-monthly report on the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, that it specifically outlines this from a risk management point of view for the wider Community Planning Partnership as well. So you probably need to look at both the report that goes to the CPP as well as our council report to get the totality of what's happening within the region.
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, no, that's helpful, and I think yeah, so the reporting line for the partnership, the Tackling Poverty Inequalities Group, I lose track of the names, but that, yeah, as Mark sort of pointed out there, that sort of reports to the CPPB as it is, so there's that two-pronged approach in terms of being able to understand the picture more fully, so I welcome that, thank you.
But obviously the membership of the CPB is different to this in some cases, not all, but yeah. So that crossover is important. Any other questions from members? No. Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations, and we're being asked to note 2.1. If I just move up a page. Existing measures in place and planned actions to manage the Council's tackling poverty and inequalities risk, as detailed in the appendix, and agree that these are sufficient. And at 2.2 to consider the implications of the tackling poverty and inequalities risk on council activities. We're happy to note and consider. Good. Moving on to review of council-wide risks, capital investment, report by Assistant Director Governance and Human Resources. We've got Mo Agun and Mark Thompson online to assist if members have any questions. Mo, Mark, do you have anything to add to the report? No, I can't see Mo actually.
Nothing to add from my perspective apart
Oh,
from...
you're there. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Just to highlight to members that this is a significant overhaul of this risk in terms of its previous form and its title. Previously was major capital projects. But really, given the significant changes and progress officers have made in terms of how they manage capital projects in the recent past, this has obviously been updated to reflect that, and I'm sure Mo, if he's online, would be able to ask any specific technical questions on those processes.
Thanks very much for that, Mark. I don't know if he's on page 2. I can't see page 2. Ah, right, okay, we'll give him a moment then.
I guess we'll open up to questions and both Mark and myself
Okay,
can try and
that's fine. Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got page 37, point 33, where it says that the current risk is included in the appendix and the programme to time, cost and quality of risk. And then I want to combine that with page 38 at point 44, the first bullet point, the accuracy of project estimates. It is inescapable that we are going through what can only be described as very challenging times from a both national and international geopolitical disruption. What is the likelihood that, as that first bullet point on page 3844, accuracy of project estimates is going to be impacted by a lot of these factors?
Oh, there's no. We'll let Mo get seated. Vlad, if I bring you in first.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, whilst Mo just gets himself settled in, and in terms of that question as to, again, it's probably similar, not dissimilar to the earlier corporate risk that we discussed there in the council-wide risks around the external factors and the impact on that and how we go about, in essence, trying to mitigate as best we can. And in essence, what we have in place in terms of the overall capital investment programme is an attempt to do that as best we can, but knowing, as you state, that there will be external factors that will affect, obviously, supply chains, will affect the actual constructions, and the cost implications around that, never mind also the expertise that's required to deliver some of these projects. So there is a significant amount of external factors that we'll continue to monitor within the programme, and that allows us to, at the various stages, report those to yourselves as decision makers along the way in the relevant gatekeeping elements of it, to ensure that you are at first opportunity able to see any impacts, and that will obviously mainly be on a cost basis and on a time basis, I would suggest. But I'll maybe pass that on to Mo to see if he wishes to add to, in essence, that kind of impacts and how we manage that where we have a project and in effect the costs and timings might differ from what we initially have planned.
Mo, morning.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry. Yes, it's basically what Vlad was saying there. As you're aware, the construction industry has been challenging over the past few years. What we tend to do, we learn in terms of lessons learned from past projects, etc. But in terms of the supply chain, what we've been doing lately is engaging more with the market and local supply chain to mitigate all the issues we find here in the region, because it's quite difficult to attract supply chain to come do business with us, especially we encounter those in the West. So we've been working with the supply chain early. We keep them aware what's in terms of project will be coming out soon to the market to hopefully attract more supply chain to come do business with us. In terms of cost and program, what I know kind of the point you're touching on is very difficult sometimes, but what we've been doing through the new gateway process, there is gateway at various stages. There is 4 gateways. So we are working with officers and the project's leads in terms to try to mitigate those issues early, to make sure everything is caught up in scope, everything is programmed appropriately, and to manage that as the project progresses further. And that same apply to the costs. So in terms of the cost plans are being reviewed and scrutinised across the gateway process by the CIPB and the CEO groups to work with officers to make sure projects are delivered as estimated and as programmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Councillor Dryburgh?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's coming back to the geopolitical side of things. I believe Martin Ogilvie and his team will be looking at this on a regular basis anyway, just in case there is any further risk to the council. I'm just looking for, clarification on that.
Mark?
Through you, Chair, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Driver, the risk management group, the council's risk management group, more particularly, I think, actively considers this, and it's very much linked to two of the council-wide risks that we have in terms of significant service failure, the risks associated with that, and the layering of impacts. So, yes, whilst the resilience function does have a significant role in looking at those outside influences, I think we, across the piece, given the significant range of interdependencies and the impacts on all services in the council, it's through that group that really that focus is maintained, and we look at those regularly, and indeed those risks came to this committee earlier this year, and I'm sure will be revisited again in the new year as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I probably have one small question just on page 41, final bullet point talks about quality assurance throughout construction. Does that apply to roads infrastructure as well, where we've got capital investment projects? Because I think we're all mindful that there's a lot of works going on across the region, and are we quality assuring that work post and signing it off? Because I think we all get feedback that some bits are done and a couple of bits are left and it looks slightly incomplete, so it's maybe just ensuring that Clerk of Works sign off is absolute. I don't know who's turn to. Mo.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely agree. In terms of quality control, what we tend to do as the council, we employ clerks of works across services, and I'm sure the roads department are the same. What we tending to do as well, on top of the clerk of works resource, there will be technical officers in terms of project managers, technicians, assisting those clerks of works on the scene in terms of regular inspection, quality reports, and without naming the project, recently we are even imposing on contractors not just to rectify the risk, the issues, but even to redo them completely. We are very, very strict in terms of our quality standards we are expecting now from the supply chain. Yes, maybe there is things missed here and there just due to the nature of the works and the amount of them, but we regularly improve here in terms of our quality controls and training and development for staff as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. So it's kind of on a related point, and it's about the multicoloured books that we have. But I think this actually came up in a recent meeting, Audit, Risk and Scrutiny, where we were talking about utility reinstatement inspections, and also the difference between what tests we apply to contractors who carry out roadworks, to utilities that carry out roadworks, to our own internal service. And I think our own internal service has the least checks and balances on it, I think is what we concluded, in the sense that we don't have the same obligation to test that to the same way. So that's probably maybe more to do with staff training, management and oversight in that regard. But I'm sure there'll be somebody can maybe speak to that potentially. It might not relate to capital projects so much as a sort of revenue repairs, etc. But again, there might be a bit of crossover. Just in terms of the other coloured books, I think one of those was the yellow books or something like that. But the green book, I'm conscious there's been a review of the green book in terms of treasury projects. And there was some, I think we would probably have felt there had been some weaknesses in the green book process that maybe didn't necessarily help rural areas where there's potentially more risk of market failure. So we might have projects that meet the green book standards, but I think there's a new one due to be published in 2026, taking on board some of the feedback. This has come through the likes of Borderlands, where it's the same sort of rigour or approach that they take, but they recognise there's been difficult challenges for rural growth areas in particular. So I'm just wondering, is that something we'll reflect upon? Because clearly when there's areas of market failure, you might only get one tender, contract or whatever. So you're in a different type of position in terms of negotiating with a contractor than you would be if there was you know, a successful market and lots of different bids, for example. So, I mean, these are pressures that we encounter in our supply chain. And just in terms of that as well, in the area where it's talking about, there's a threshold for under 1 million, over 1 million and 5 million in the in page 41. You know, what we've seen over the last few years is that projects that we would otherwise have thought achievable using the Green Book standard have suddenly become unachievable because the cost supply chain inflation has increased so much, and that's impacted in housing or other capital projects, for example. So I'm just wondering, given that these factors are kind of out with our control and the tools that we're using to try and get the most rigorous project proposal, if you like, are subject to a bit of change as well, what extra strengths can we put in place to further mitigate or strengthen our rigour and control over cost fluctuations that would take something under the £1 million, for example, into a £1.1 million, and then you've got a different oversight arrangement in place. So, you know, a few things in there, Chair, but just sort of waxing lyrical. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Mo?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Just pick up quickly on the repairs element. Unfortunately, I won't probably give you a broader answer around when it comes to roads. I can check with officers and come back to you. But in terms of if I can benchmark it against the property, for example, the repairs themselves, you appreciate that are a fast-paced service to go. But the way we deal with them, although they might be issues and contractors are carrying the works, but there is a clerk of works who regularly check those repairs, and if there is any issues with them, we will go back to them and hold contractors accountable for that. As I said, because it's a fast pace, it might be slightly later in comparison to a construction project. But in terms of the road side, I can ask officers from and colleagues from roads and come back to you on answering that. In terms of the Green Book and the gateway process and the larger project, the Green Book itself is a guidance, and it gets developed and reviewed on a yearly or a few years. For us, benchmarking and using that guidance, it doesn't mean it's almost like it's a Bible for us that we have to stick to that. It's more about taking that guidance and making it suits our council, our project, and how we deliver a project. As you said, there will be projects in rural areas, they don't really kind of fit with that, but we just tend to reference to that and make it work for us. There is the SCIM guidelines, which is for Scottish basis, which is the Scottish Capital Investment Plan. We revert to that, and we are in larger project working with borderland colleagues, which we're learning in terms of experiences as when there is issues to try to mitigate to that. What we're trying to do as well in the reference to the project, they creep up, as you said, from one benchmark to another, is while we are building this project, we go through the commission and going through the brief, we're trying to build an appropriate risk and optimism buy-ins allowances that will deal with the issues of the scope creep to hopefully mitigate us going through those benchmarks. But there is a project board in place, which are chaired by the senior responsible officers. In many cases, that will be head of services and assistant director. And there is the CEOG and the CIPB groups as well, which have officers from across the council, and that's including finance, legal, etc., to make sure there is an appropriate governance in place to mitigate these issues. And there will be instances where the project have to stop if there is no those governance and guidance are not followed, and to be dealt with at that stage, and all that will be reported to the CIPB and to the ENI committee, and if required to full council as well. Thank you.
Happy with that? Yeah, good. I'm not seeing any other members indicating they wish to speak, so we'll move to the recommendations. And we're being asked to consider 2.1, the implications of the capital investment risk on council activities, and at 2.2, note the existing measures in place and planned actions to manage the Council's capital investment risk as detailed in the appendix to the report, and agree that these are sufficient. Are we happy to consider and note? Good. So moving on to item 9, Regulation of Investigatory Powers, Scotland Act 2000, RIPSA, Use of Powers and Policy Update, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources, and Mark Thompson is here to assist if members have any questions. Anything to add to the report, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing to add. It speaks for itself, I think, this report.
Okay. So I'll open the floor to members. Councillor Dryburgh.
I just agree the recommendations, Chair.
Members wishing to come in? Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations and agree 2.1, there's been no use of the investigatory powers since the last report, and 2.2, the recent update of the Council's RIPSA policies as referenced in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.7. So happy to note 1 and 2. Moving on to item 10, Council Health and Safety Update Report, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources, and we have Sue Hawken-Pethick and Stuart Clanahan are online to assist members if you have any questions. And Sue, Stuart, do you have anything to add to the reports?
Hi, nothing to actually add, just key areas, particularly as positive new developments this year is the digitisation of the Health and Safety Portal and My Learning. And you'll see the key areas there for operational key activities. Main focus areas material biological treatment plant, asbestos and fire safety. And particularly to note for forward focus is the SLT CMT commitment to the Irish Behavioural Science for Leadership and implementation of the Strategic Health and Safety Forum and particularly an ongoing programme for fire safety visits. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sue. I've got Councillor Barretti.
Yes, I'm getting a hang of this, getting in first now. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Sue. Excuse me. Page 48, the main focus of areas for occupational health and safety. Part of interest is that on 4.4 you've got the serious incident investigation fire MBT shredded pit, material pit and drying hall, and then also the MBT explosion protection document. If we are talking about the serious incident fire, are we talking about lithium battery related fires, and or are we talking also in the drying hall about compostable materials that are just so happen to catch fire? And if these events do happen, what is the sort of downtime that is going to happen to make the zones safe?
Thanks, Tony. Sue?
Hiya. To be honest, the downtime would really be relevant, dependent on what actually happened. The cause of the fires is a mixture of things going into the system that perhaps should not be, and there's been significant work being undertaken to mitigate those risks, so to reduce those downtimes and also critical failure as well. What projects going forward is that we're actually removing the dust refinement side of the area as part of capital investment as well, which will further reduce that risk. And also there's been a lot of work done with waste service regarding promotion and trying to mitigate them going into the waste stream in the first place at source as well. Specifics obviously would have to be discussed with the Waste Health and Safety Office, the Waste Operational Manager on that particular aspect to go into full details on that.
Is it okay if I come back in, Chair?
Yeah, of course.
Now that's interesting, because obviously we do get other reports when it comes to Scottish Fire and Rescue when these things happen, and it is an ongoing consideration, and probably a bigger problem in the future as poor quality batteries and components get thrown away. But I have also just one other question. The perfluorooctanoic acid restriction from foam extinguishers. Now, am I right in saying that they are an element of acids which are damaging to the environment if they get into the water stream? And are they one of these things which we are trying to find an alternative for?
Yeah, it's just really keeping up with the latest guidelines and regulations on the environmental side, and we've been supporting property services in that to review, to see, just to review to minimise any need for those. Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'm looking at page 50 at 4.12 with absence from work-related accidents and work-related stress. I mean, one of the ideas of these reports is to see what we can do as elected members to try and improve absence from work. And I know this was last year's report as opposed to this year's, but what I would like to understand is in relation to work-related stress, there's been an increase from last year. Not a large increase, but an increase. So are these reports helping us reduce the amount of absences that are taking place? And in the work-related stress, is this a small number of people with a large number of days off, or is it a large number of people with small days off?
Okay. Okay. Right. Two aspects on that. You'll see within the table 3, it actually details the number of instances and also the number of days lost. So it is basically a range. There are a few staff members that are on a considerable time loss, so it does actually offset that balance, absolutely. But it is a range from one to the other, as you quite rightly say. I know HR and also organisational development are doing quite a lot of work with all the wellbeing champions across the council, and a lot of promotion, as well as working with individual line managers. HR work and support absence management directly with line managers for the specific case involving that individual, and setting in account that set of circumstances, and including consideration of a stress risk assessment if there's any further improvements that the line manager hasn't already considered, to safeguard individuals and consider work-related stress. But it is going to it's not going to go away. It's an ongoing area, not just within our council, but elsewhere, and it is a continual challenge and ongoing support that has to be made available.
Thanks, Sue. Vlad, do you want to come in at this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think a really good question there in terms of the two elements of it. One being, again, that question around is it kind of short-term absences or long-term absences, and I think there's a mixture of both, and that's clear in the stats. And as Sue, I think, explained very well there in terms of what we're aiming to do, both from a health and safety perspective, but more importantly also from an overall council perspective, is to ensure that we have that early intervention and prevention where we can. We've got really good policies about work, stress at work processes and assessments, and occupational health comes into that, as well as some of the good interventions that we've got through, for example, mental health champions, as well as the kind of overall line management processes that we've got to try and help our staff through these times. But as Sue, I think it's again similar to the other risks that we were discussing earlier, pointed out there, is that in essence what we're trying to do is mitigate it. It'll never go away. And we need to be frank and honest about that, but what we can try and do is mitigate it as best we can and ensure that experience for our staff is as best as we can make it. And we've got a project in place that members have triggered through last year's processes, and we're in the process of triggering that in terms of absence management, and right at the heart of that is some of this work that Sue has highlighted.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dashper.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 53 at the EVAC chair item, which says we had 44 members of staff trained in how to use EVAC chairs. Obviously, they're an important piece of equipment for evacuating mobility impaired people safely downstairs and such. I'm just wondering, what is the provision of EVAC chair equipment in our buildings, particularly over those with stairs over multiple floors? Thank you.
Right. Well, it's based on two things. General fire risk assessment, they determine for the need are based on that, and also for personal evacuation plans as well, on a general basis, but also on an individual basis. It needs to be part of the individual personal evacuation plan as well. So that is where the need is based on, of where they're assigned, really. But yes, they are provided within the council with a council contract for those, and then undergoing contract maintenance and visual inspections on those as well.
Thank you, Sue. Ben?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'd be interested maybe getting specific information, maybe on a locality basis, about where they are provided, if we could take that as an action for a follow-up, maybe. Thank you.
Would that be possible, Sue?
I can talk to my colleagues in property and estates and programmes.
We'll mark that as an action, Claire. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So it was on the same table on the training side, and obviously it gives a couple of columns, you know, showing what training was taking part in the first part of the year, and then the second part of the year, and then the total in terms of number of staff trained by the end of March 2025. So I suppose the question is really, have we trained enough people? You know, I don't know if that means we've met all our mandatory training requirements for the need that's been assessed, if you like, or there are still people waiting in a queue to get the relevant training for that. So it's just really is there any way we can put that in context to the training need and the training that's been delivered, which obviously this records here. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I agree. The information could be enhanced, and the James McDowell from Organisational Development, with the purchase of the organisational development with the My Learning, it's going to give us a better increase of business intelligence for what the need is, and to be able to report on better. So that is definitely something that that we're looking to be able to provide going forward. It's just that information is just not available in a coordinated council sense to be able to present, but we're getting there. Organisational development have been doing a good piece of work to move things forward on that, so that we can enhance that business performance aspect. So yes, that's definitely now in the plan to be able to provide you that.
Stephen?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's encouraging. I suppose it'd be natural to ask, is there a sort of timescale for that, so that we know when that might take shape? And even with what business intelligence we do have without that system, I'm sure there'll be a sense of, well, we know we've got half the staff trained, 3/4. You know, I mean, have we got a sense of the level of demand that's still outstanding? And I know there might not be an exact figure on that, and that's what part of this piece of work will establish. But I suppose it's how well do you reckon we're doing, and then when will the tool be in place so that we know for sure exactly what we need to achieve? Thank you.
I can tell you that the demand has increased, and if the requests have been put in, that they are being met by organisational development. It's making sure, I suppose, through our fire risk assessment and auditing process, that part of the fire risk assessment when we go out and audit is we are actually, part of the fire risk assessment is the fact that are there people adequately trained in the building. So it is an ongoing programme, but I couldn't say yes, there's an X number for an absolute. But again, as I say, the business intelligence information that's going to be, I'm meeting actually up with organisational development manager in a couple of weeks through the Health and Safety Forum. We've identified we're going to actually have a strategic health and safety training review and plan, so that priority plan can be reported in the next review, so that you'll see that in the reports in the next committee review.
Thank you, Sue. I'll bring Vlad in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just about to mention the kind of health and safety forum, and in essence, one of the pieces of work is absolutely identifying what the training need is, but that is in a way an ongoing system, because again, we know that staff come and go. We also know that staff move about in between teams, and their requirements will change depending on that, but also the relevant national and on our own kind of perspective and guidance might also change in terms of what the requirements are for the different people. So again, for IOS training, it's about identifying what level, what it is that we want to get out of it, to carry that out, and we know that we're delivering that for senior management at the moment, and just to give you an idea of that, that's kind of 3 full days that will be involved within that training. But if you miss one of those training days, then you can't complete the course, and therefore we then need to find another route for delivering that. So we're working through those, but in essence, you're absolutely right, we need to identify who needs it, but that might be an ongoing change that we can't have an absolute baseline on, because the needs might change depending on the guidance, legislation and everything else that comes with that. But we're working through that, and again, at the moment we don't have that business intelligence, but the forum's working through that.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks for your indulgence, Chair. So it's just to come back on that. So I'm conscious that certain roles, there'll be a required level of training that's necessary for the post, and a person may have had that training and then move elsewhere. So I don't know if that gets recorded as a kind of positive, but it's like, well, yes, but that training may not be relevant for that post. So does it follow the post or the person is one question, because you would arguably, while people may move about, it's the role that they hold in the organisation that would require the training, but the person may change, if that makes sense. So how are we measuring that? Because we could probably identify all the posts that have a required level of training, and that would be fairly fixed in the scheme of things. And then there'd be people who move about within that who may need training for any given post that they occupy at the time, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I'll come in on that one if that's okay through yourself, Chair. So a perfect example is fire warden training. So if you've got an X number of people in the building, then you start assessing how many fire wardens you require out of that. You then train fire wardens, but then, for example, some staff may move buildings, and then thereafter, again, your need remains the same, but then you need to retrain, and it's all good that they've been fire warden trained, but they might not be required to be fire wardens wherever they move to. So in essence, you're constantly trying to play catch up on that training level and ensuring that you're meeting the relevant requirements for that service, whether that's roads, and we were discussing that earlier, and road safety, right through to that kind of fire warden or even senior management requirements within that, and overall health and safety duties and responsibilities that we have, and that duty of care to our staff. So it very much is a kind of flexible thing, it's ongoing, but yes, we're trying to determine that baseline, and that's important. Again, the fire warden example is probably that perfect way that we could say, right, if this building will require X number of staff to be in it, then we require X number of wardens to be there. But again, if the population of that building starts to reduce, then you reduce the number of wardens that are required. And again, it'll be a forever changing requirement is what I would probably say on that front. So Sue, I don't know if you wish to add to that?
Yeah, just from an operational side of it, obviously there's different layers of training. You've got your general induction and core training that's relevant across the business. But post can be a bit of a challenge to do it by post, just for the simple fact that it's got to be based by legislation, best practice, and by risk assessment, because line managers, it is a moving target, because depending on what equipment staff need to use, what is proportionate about what training what that training looks like as well. So it is quite a challenge, yes.
Thanks. Sue, do you want to come back in that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just as a kind of final example, which might be helpful, chief officers have to carry site visits for their relevant services, and I've recently carried one out, and within that we'd identified, obviously we go through the due process of the overall health and safety assessment, and have discussions with the staff around what they feel are the risks. And one thing that the staff are very clear about is potential extra training that they might require, not so much in that kind of hard and fast health and safety element, but maybe more of the managing of what could be difficult conversations with members of the public, and members of the public that might get upset, and how to manage that. So again, you know, identifying it through that process that we're carrying out, which is those inspections and those site visits, allows us to further pin down training that we deem appropriate at that point in time.
Of course, Stephen.
No, I mean, thanks for the comprehensive response. I think that helps me understand it is a moving target, and presumably, or I suppose, the assurance that would seek would be that the business intelligence system allows us to basically achieve that, so it's good value. And also, but I'm conscious this focuses on health and safety training rather than other types of training. So I don't know if that's something that we would necessarily get back here, but maybe it's reported through one of the, you know, the joint safety or the consultative group. You know, there'll be other forums maybe where that type of training might feature more, because that's more related to, I suppose, managing the role that you have, not necessarily in a health and safety sense, but in just a sort of getting better outcome sense, I suppose.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. Yes, absolutely. We report these through Enabling Customer Services, which has that overall portfolio. But I think importantly, and I take your point in terms of it's not maybe a hardcore health and safety training that's carried out, but actually that early intervention and prevention that you're maybe upskilling your staff to be able to have that intervention and to be trauma informed in terms of how we manage that customer that's come in through the door. And actually that might, because of the examples they were giving me, is quite clear it does become a health and safety matter if we're not addressed appropriately. So I think it's upskilling our staff to be able to prevent it.
Good, thank you. I have no other members indicating they wish to speak, so we'll move to the recommendations, and we're being asked to, at 2.1, consider the overall summary of activities by the Council Health and Safety Team at paragraphs 4.1 to 4.4 and proposed forward focus at para 4.5. 2.2, consider key health and safety operational support activities by organisational development at paras 4.6 to 4.8 and appendix 1. And 2.3, consider the work-related incident and ill health absence data at paras 4.9 to 4.12 and at appendix 2, and health and safety enforcement authority action on our council at paragraph 4.13. So we're all happy to consider? Yes. You look a bit tentative, Councillor Thompson.
It's just my face. But I think there was a couple of actions in there as well, maybe just about sharing information, so if they can be captured as well, thank you.
Yeah. Claire, do you want to capture the actions? There was certainly one around the EVAC chairs.
Yes, the action I've got noted is the information on the EVAC chairs and where they're located. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. With that, members, we'll move on to item 11, Annual Complaints Monitoring Report 2024-25. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dryborough.
No, it's for this report, Chair.
Director Governance and Human Resources, and we have Gillian Grieveson online to assist members. Gillian, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, thank you, Chair. Nothing to add.
Thanks, Gillian. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And again, you know, page 65, when you look at the year in numbers, there was 65,941 cases created, 637 were complaints. But when you look at the sort of pink, purpley coloured box, there was only 362 at stage 1 closed, with a further 16 at stage 2 and within 20 working days, and 51 were escalated complaints closed within 20 working days. Now, that is just over half of the complaints received. So I'm just wondering what happened with the other 48, 49% of those particular complaints. It's the largest amount of complaints that we've had in the last 5 years. But I don't understand what's happened to nearly half of the complaints. So I can't see anywhere in the report what's actually happened with them.
Thanks, Archie. Gillian?
Thanks, Councillor Driver. Just to clarify, you're asking about the difference between the number that were closed at stage 1 and closed at stage 2?
No, you at that page 65, you've received 637 complaints. You've closed 362, 16 and 51, which is, just about 55% or something like that. Excuse my mathematics. I left school with 2 A-level shoplifting and truancy, but that's a different matter altogether. But it looks like nearly 310 complaints haven't been. I can't see anywhere where they've been investigated or returned to the complainer.
Chair, if it's okay with yourself, I'll take that one offline to just look at the maths rather than hold up the question, because I don't see the numbers in there either to be able to answer that fully. Apologies.
Oh, pardon me. I think there was 429 that had been closed over a period of up to 20 working days of the 637. So I think the question was, where have the other 200 and plus gone? Have they been withdrawn? Have they? Yeah, so we can get that information offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
I'll follow that up, no problem.
Archie?
Okay, thank you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Any other members? No, okay, with that we'll move to the recommendations, and we're being asked at 2.1 to approve the annual complaints monitoring report for 2024-2025 as detailed in the appendix, and at 2.2 to agree to the publication of this report on our council's website, which is a requirement from the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman, and we'll get that information for members offline on the figures that are not matching. Yeah, that's great. Okay, moving on to item 12, internal audit reports issued. Report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. And we have Kirsty Peden in the room, Mark Malloy online, Stuart McMillan online, and Richard Fox in the room. So who's leading? You are. Anything to add to the report?
May I just ask a favour, Chair, and that we take each individual
Yes.
internal audit report in sequence?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine. So I've got Councillor Dashper.
Thank you. Page 105, the George Hotel, again, the main issue is that at the time of the audit, a clear use of the building had not been identified, says the internal audit. So I suppose, what is the service doing proactively to identify use for the building now? Thank you.
Richard, do you want to pick up on that?
We actually have Stuart McMillan online who will have the detail, but there is work ongoing at the moment to develop a business case and occupant for the building.
Stuart, would you like to add anything to Councillor Dashper's question? Have we lost Stuart? He's on hold, yeah. What does that mean? We'll maybe come back to that and we'll try and get Stuart. Okay, so any more questions on the George Hotel in Stranraer? No? We'll come back to that if Stuart appears. Oh, he's off hold. Stuart, did you? Hi, Stuart.
Hi, folks. Sorry.
Can you hear now, Stuart?
I'm sorry, Gail. I've been having some connection problems this morning. Sorry.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah.
I'll bring Councillor Dashborough back in. He had a question around the George
Thank
Hotel.
you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, page 105 just mentions about the business case and use of the building for the George Hotel. Don't know if you can just expand on if there's an update on that. I'm sure you appreciate it's been some time now. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So we've been working through scenarios for the development of an operational model for the hotel, and looking at the different scenarios of either seeking somebody that can come in and manage it as an entire entity, or to start to subdivide that into its component parts. And you'll be aware that there's sort of three aspects to the George: the bunkhouse, the climbing wall, and the arts facility. So we're reaching a conclusion in that. We've got some options around that, but we'll be and we think we've got some really good advice around some of the commerciality around some of that, and how different parts of that can subsidise other areas of it as well. So I think we're in a really good place that as the construction works, albeit they have been delayed as they start to conclude, that we'll be able to go out to the market, which will include social enterprises locally, to seek specific occupiers for different parts of that building. And we'll be doing that over the course of the autumn and winter months, because we're looking at site conclusion and opening in the early part of 2026, so 2026-27. So it's taken a lot of work to get to this point, but we're feeling that we're in a really good place, in a better place actually than we were probably this time last year, in terms of the knowledge of how the building should be able to operate.
Okay, happy with that, Ben?
Yeah, happy for that. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks.
No, that's great. Any more questions on the external funding for the George Hotel? Nope. So move on to external funding for Dalbeattie Rocks and Wheels. Any questions on that? Internal audit report? No. And then Stranraer Water Sports Hub. Any questions? No, he's shaking his head. Good. Internal audit report on Community Council finances. And lastly, impact assessments. No. Oh, Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, well, apologies, Chair. My finger wasn't wet enough for it to activate the hands button. Going back to your community councils, I'm just trying to flick through the pages here because I'd happened to lose track of where we were going. Page 138, and it relates to the point 1.2, the scheme of establishments, and point 1.4. Although it does say that community councils would mostly like to have what I would understand paper records or contact with banks. On 1.4 it says online banking is used only when agreed by majority of community council. Now, given that certainly over the last 2 years we have seen a significant change in the banking infrastructure in Dumfries and Galloway in general, and it's likely to get worse if we believe what is going to happen is going to happen. And given that mention of one particular community council having problems, I also know from experience doing round the ward that more community councils do have in fact problems trying to manage their affairs online. It's certainly when you have to have I think it is 3 security persons to manage the online accounts. Is it time for us to revisit all of this to make it easier for community councils to actually do their transactions?
I think we've got the gist of most of that. It wasn't the clearest of signals, but I'm looking to Richard initially.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Has Councillor Brutty alluded to, society in general has moved on in terms of moving away from cheque payments towards moving for online banking. Now, the scheme of establishments as currently written is actually still based on the idea that two people would sit together and put two signatures on cheques. And slightly oddly, it then says online banking only can be done one individual. Now, I previously brought reports to this committee about school funds, and it is about based on risk. And I would firmly recognise if a community council has only got a few £100s, then a sole individual managing that bank account is actually acceptable. But we also found as part of this review that some community councils have got £50,000 or £60,000, when the level of risk and security is therefore greater. And equally, banks will offer banking arrangements whereby you can actually log on online and one person will create a payment and a separate person will authorise it. Those two people don't need to be in the same home or the same town when they do it. So it is possible to put these security arrangements in place. And I think the recommendation from internal audit is that certainly where community councils have significant funds, they should arrange for their bank account to be organised in a way which provides that level of security of making sure that two office bearers are involved in every significant transaction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Councillor Baretti?
Yeah, it's okay if I come in, Chair. I agree, Richard, that things have changed, but I do find that some community councillors do in fact struggle to get online, and it's not all that straightforward depending where you are in the region. So it is even the fact that we do potential training and support for these community councils when they do experience these problems, because community councils do have a tendency to rotate individuals within the organisation, and therefore you can have one person dealing with the security, and then a few months later they decide to leave the council, and then someone else has to do it. So it's not static. It is moving all the time, and I think that as funds, certainly from those community councils where they are involved in wind farm distribution monies, their finances usually can quite often go above 100,000, and it's not a question of temptation by someone, but it's a question of management of the funds, Richard.
Yeah, thanks for that observation, Tony. It's not an easy situation for some, I'm aware. No other questions from members? Oh, sorry, Richard, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say I have a colleague sitting beside me, and we noted in the audit report that uptake of training was limited by community councils, and if a community council has a significant issue, it's much better to come in advance and speak to council officers to get support, and they will get the help they require, rather than just struggle on alone and get into difficulties. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And I know we don't have federations across the entire region, but there's that route for some in parts of the region as well. Councillor Thompson?
Can I just come in?
Oh, sorry, Tony. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, that does seem to be what I've observed, but it is the fact that community councils are not aware that there is that, or some community councils are not aware that there is that support mechanism, because, as Richard says, they do struggle on.
Kirsty. They should be.
Thank you, Chair. If there are particular community councillors that Councillor Bletty, I'd be very happy if you want to bring them to my attention. We do certainly make regular attempts through the Community Council newsletter and through the correspondence list, which has all secretaries, both to promote the training programme and resources that are available, but also the potential to join with other community councils, as the Chair has mentioned, in terms of networks and associations. And just last Saturday we were attempting to do that for the first Community Council conference, where we brought community councils together and tried to promote that benefit of shared learning and shared working. But I am very happy to pick up any individuals. I know that we have a number of individual training courses that we do, particularly when there's new community councils. We know that it changes regularly. Last election was October, with 645 community councillors elected, and we're now up at 672. So we know there's a regular flurry very successful, just take the opportunity to say, in Wigton last Tuesday night, a 10% turnout at the casual vacancy election there. So we know that these are changing bodies, but continue to offer support wherever we possibly can.
Thank
you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And I think that the ward officers certainly in our patch are very good at engaging with the community councils as well. So I think there's ample opportunity for them to seek assistance if they require it. Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. It's sort of mostly been covered. I think page 143, and it's something that I would tend to contact community councils at dumgal.gov.uk intermittently, because there's quite a number of community councils in our ward, and quite often they'll maybe have a question that relates to something about the scheme of establishment or an issue, or in particular in banking. And I know one had asked just about that online banking being used. How does the community council keep track of a transaction if you've only got one authorised person for the digital banking, and it sets it out there? So it would be helpful if that was in the scheme, but that's already picked up as an action. And I think it might have been yourself, Kirsty, that was sort of dealing with that whenever I raised it. But so I think we've maybe been slow to move with the times, given that this is clearly going to be the lie of the land for most community councils now. But there is, as Councillor Beretti was pointing out, a very varied landscape with community councils, some of whom are keen, but they're not in a mad rush to read the scheme of establishment. With the best will in the world. And, even though we had a good event on the other weekend, again, it was, not a massive percentage of the 670, I think it is now, community councillors. So there is that recognition, I think, that even though we're getting information out, we're not maybe ward members can do this, is like actually we could be feeding back what the community councillors need support with, as and when we can, so that your team knows the level of demand in each of the different community council areas, which I know you're on top of anyway most of the time. But yeah, so that's just really an observation. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say there is also no substitute for the old-fashioned basics of when the community council meets, for the treasurer to always be there and to bring a copy of the bank statement with them to the meeting, and that just provides assurance to the members there. So actually we don't need to always just think about technology to get this assurance, but just work together as a community council. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just the scrutiny by the members of the community council. Absolutely, yeah. Good. So no other members wishing to come in at this stage, so we'll move to the recommendations. And members are being asked to note and comment on the finalised internal audit reports at appendices 1 to 5. I think we had no, nobody put their hands up for the impact assessment. No. So there was a couple of actions to come out of that as well, Claire. Was there? No, just to seek assurance from Kirsty that the contact will be made if required. Yeah. Good. Okay, moving on to item 13. National Fraud Initiative Update, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. And again, we have Richard Fox here to assist members with any questions. Richard, do you want to add to your report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just checking, at risk of jeopardising myself, did anyone have any questions on the impact assessment report? No, we didn't. That's fine. Thank you. I just have one thing to add to the NFI report, if I may, and that is in paragraph 411, I refer to legislation being introduced for data matching of social care data. That process has now moved on, and the data has actually been requested by Audit Scotland and will be submitted in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Open the floor to members. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Page 160 and point 48, where it talks about blue badges and those that have been cancelled. Just as a matter of interest, was this done by a human being or was it done by AI to retrieve this data and cross-reference?
Richard.
As far as I'm aware, the NFI does not use AI. It is simple and old-fashioned process of taking our data of use of blue badges and matching it against national records of deaths in society, and that brings a list of anomalies, and from that officers go through and establish if there are blue badges which are still in existence for people who passed away. Also just touching on blue badges, if I may, as members will be aware, there is actually no particular advantage in Dumfries and Galloway from having a blue badge. We don't charge for parking in this area, and therefore we're assuming in the vast majority of cases it is simple oversight that when someone passes away, the blue badge has not been returned. There's no evidence of misuse or maliciousness in this case. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Richard.
Yeah, if I can come back in, Chair.
Of course, Tony.
It's interesting what Richard has said there, but we often, because the blue badge system is a UK-wide system, does that mean that anyone coming from outside of D&G might not know that we in fact have free parking and still comes in with a blue badge and could still be abusing the system?
Loaded question, Richard.
I'm not sure how they would abuse the question here. Certainly, I do know from speaking to other councils, they do have parking wardens who will scan the blue badge on a car, and if it is expired, they will obviously clamp the car and impose a penalty in other areas. And therefore, there is a risk that our residents, one of our residents may choose to take a blue badge and park in Edinburgh for free, but there is a risk with that to them. And what the NFI does is like a mop-up exercise to ensure that at least every 2 years we cancel all the blue badges that we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Richard, for that response. But we do have, shops which have car parks who require to see a disabled parking badge because they can get fined if it's not shown. Tesco's, for instance, and I just heard the other day that somebody got fined £70 for not producing his disabled park badge. So you might be all right in council car parks, but where there's private car parks and there's disabled areas, you need to show your badge.
Yeah, thanks, Archie. I think that was more of a statement than a question, wasn't it? Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I mean, Richard's, to be fair, just answered the question. I was going to ask how frequently does that exercise get carried out, because obviously it's quite a high hit rate compared to some of the other checks that we carry out where it ends up being quite a low number of high quality instances of an issue. But that one seems to be, that's quite 516 possible, 344 actual seems quite, quite significant. So, but you were saying it's carried out every 2 years, and just listen to the debate so far. It's not so much people abusing the system here, it's I suppose people with badges here abusing the system elsewhere that might be a trickle-out effect of potential abuse, but clearly that's maybe not the highest priority. But if it's carried out every 2 years, then I would imagine that we'll just pick them up routinely anyway through this mechanism. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. And I will reiterate what I said before. I can touch on a minute for the national entitlement card, the bus data exercise which is taking place later this year. But the distinction in this case, we have no evidence that actually a blue badge has been misused. It's simply not been returned. I contrast that to the exercise which I've referred to again in 410 on concessionary travel, which is the correct phrase, where we will actually be able to tell whether a bus pass belonging to someone who's passed away has actually been used on a bus, which actually provides far more evidence of fraud in that case. This is a weaker exercise, shall we say, but it is a mop-up exercise every 2 years.
Happy with that? So no other members indicating they wish to speak, so we'll move to the recommendations, and members are asked to note and comment on progress with National Fraud Initiative for 2024-25. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Item 14, I've not been notified of any urgent business, so can I thank members and officers for their attendance today, and I'll now bring the meeting to a close. Thank you all.